Well, joining me now for reaction is Jim Frederick, international editor and executive editor for Time magazine, and Joel Rubin, former State Department officer. Gentlemen, it's good to have you here.
Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah, let's just dive right in, Jim. As we saw in this clip here, Ahmadinejad striking some very familiar themes, kind of flowery off the top there, but making some not so subtle reference that what he perceives to be Israel being a threat, but also saying that no one around the world feels safe and secure, kind of demonizing everybody else that does have stockpiles of weapons and that he can't get any.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting about this particular speech, which is his 8th one, we've kind of come to look to Ahmadinejad as a kind of comic relief if the things that he said weren't so deadly serious and scary. So actually this speech was for him fairly restrained. I mean, he didn't whip out any Holocaust denial. He didn't overtly threaten anyone. He didn't actively demonize Obama or Israel. He didn't even mention Israel by name, for example. But yeah, I mean, he
only mentioned Zionists.
Zionists, exactly. He mentioned Zionists. Yeah, and definitely struck some familiar themes that, why should all these Western powers and people in our neighborhood have weapons and we don't? But interestingly, I think as a sort of swan song, for him, it was a little bit restrained.
Other people to watch today, that people were watching for, is Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi addressing the UN for the very first time. Take a look.
The behavior by some individuals, and the insults hurled on the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, is rejected. We reject this. We cannot accept it. And we will be the opponents of those who do this. We will not allow anyone to do this.
So now Morsi also reiterated that he is against the use of violence. And yesterday, Joel, President Obama offered this robust defense of freedom of speech as a preeminent right in our country. But meanwhile, while this speech comes today, is there a conflict between those two visions?
Thank you, Thomas, for having me. There's really not a conflict. In a sense, President Obama and Bibi Netanyahu tomorrow are bracketing the speeches that we're seeing today by Ahmadinejad and Morsi. And we witnessed something fascinating, which is that Morsi has shown that Egypt is now taking a more aggressive leadership role in the Middle East, while Iran, paradoxically, has become more isolated, is on the ropes, and Ahmadinejad is seen almost as a past, clownish-type figure. But this discussion of freedom of speech, of how to deal with violence against embassies, it's present. The president himself spoke with Morsi about this, and they calmed down the situation in Cairo. So I think this is a dialogue that we're going to see more of, but it does not seem to be a clash that's not workable.
All right, so Jim, as Joel says, Egypt wanting to take more of a leadership role here, and Iran kind of more ostracized and insulated than ever before. But as we talk about Syria, we've seen world leader after world leader, including President Obama, condemn the Assad regime in Syria. Jim, I'll start with you. Can we expect to see any movement on that front?
I mean, to continue that theme, I think that Morsi really is the breakout leader of the past couple of months, and you compare him to Ahmadinejad, just how seriously as a statesman he wants to be taken and not to be perceived as anybody's lapdog. Here today he said on no uncertain terms would he accept military intervention into Syria, while a couple of weeks ago when he himself was in Tehran, he took a very hard line with the Iranians themselves, saying that, their support of the Syrian regime was unacceptable. So I think we're seeing possibly the real breakout of, a new regional statesman here.
Joel, do you agree with that, and also about the terms of any movement that the UN might do towards Syria?
I do, and I think to back on what Jim said, Morsi is showing that Egypt is going to chart its own path. They're open to the West. They have a relationship with the United States that's strong, and at the same time, they are a democracy that is an Islamic democracy, a political Islamic party running it, and they're going to chart a path where they're going to try to play all different angles, and they criticized Israel, they criticized Iran. Certainly, in the days ahead, it's going to be interesting to watch.
Jim, as we've been watching, though, Morsi and the president's relationship develop, and the president give that interview about not being an ally, not being an enemy, but Egypt has been such a critical ally over the years, certainly through Mubarak, but they have relied heavily on the billions of dollars that we've sent them, our taxpayer dollars. But does it come down to now who needs who more?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the one hand, Egypt has a by treaty definition is an ally and has been an ally and probably will be an ally. I think, an underreported aspect of what Obama's comments could have been interpreted as was a personal message that while Egypt is an ally, it's not. There are strings attached, and I think he was sending a personal message that we need to make sure that we can do business with each other, man to man, person to person, leader to leader. So, yeah, I think that Morsi is charting his own path, but he knows that the United States is the most valuable ally that Egypt is going to have.
Jim, thank you. Joel.